Well, welcome back to the Court of History, the place where the history and politics and the law converge to try and help us figure out what's going on amidst this constitutional crisis that we're in. I'm Sean Wilentz, historian teaching at Princeton, and I'm here with my partner, Sidney Blumenthal, public figure, advisor to presidents, historian himself. And we're very, very pleased today to have with us Jonathan Weiner, who was many posts, U.S. Special Envoy to Libya, the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for international law enforcement under President Clinton, and a counsel to U.S. Senator John Kerry. Great to have you with us again, Jonathan. And now our subject is going to be corruption. We've been hearing a lot in the news lately about all of the deals that are being made around the world, contrary to the emoluments clause of the Constitution, seemingly turning the United States government basically into a subsidiary of the Trump organization, doing whatever it can to drum up deals of one kind or another. But it's even larger than that, the corruption. And so for that, we have Jonathan with us to fill us in on what's going on. Jonathan, give us a sense of how bad this all is.
Well, the United States was the world's leader in criminalizing the making and the acceptance of bribes. Believe it or not, commercial bribery, many forms of bribery, were not illegal, particularly if they were involved people outside your country. It was all considered to be appropriate ways of gaining business or getting favor. And in Europe, they didn't make it illegal across the board until 1999, that late. And in the 1990s, when I was Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for International Law Enforcement, I was going around the world saying you've got to criminalize bribery, active and passive bribery, taking and receiving, and you've got to put into place laws to counter money laundering. Now, why do you have to counter money laundering? Because if you don't have laws that make the banks the deputy sheriffs for the government, banks will be facilitating bribe payments and every other form of corruption and criminality on a daily basis. And what happens when you don't prosecute those cases and you don't see those cases is there's a race to the bottom because there's an advantage to be corrupt. If you can get a contract because you're making a corrupt payment, you're going to beat the person who won't make the corrupt payment every time.
So what's Trump done, Jonathan?
So what Trump has done is it's very interesting. What he first did, he said his Justice Department is not going to be prosecuting international corruption cases. It's not going to be prosecuting money laundering cases. It's going to be taking apart intelligence on these topics as well. It's essentially wiping out the whole white-collar enforcement side of the federal government. And most importantly and relevantly here, it's going to stop regulation of crypto and create a giant opaque protection for whatever's going on in the world of crypto. Now, when I was in the Obama administration, I was very unhappy that the Obama administration was not being more aggressive in dealing with crypto because crypto undid two of the major reforms we put into place starting in the late 80s and the late 90s and continuing the early aughts. And those reforms were end numbered bank accounts, where if you have a number, you say, here's my number, you've got the money, no questions asked. And it was really important that we end that practice. There are also something called bearer shares, a related concept. And bearer shares is whoever's got the shares owns the account. You got the shares, they're yours. You put those two things together and you had anonymous ownership of all kinds of assets all over the world. So we work with other countries multilaterally to put those standards in place on a global basis as a condition for doing business with the United States. You want to have transactions touch the United States, you have to do that. And we got everybody aboard. Now with crypto allows you to do transactions based on numbers only. You got the number, the code, you're all set. It combines bearer shares with numbered bank accounts. So we predicted when crypto happened that it would wind up being used by foreign intelligence services against the United States. And what did Bob Mueller find in the Mueller report? And who did he indict? A major Russian organization supported by the Kremlin that was involved in shenanigans in the 2016 elections to help elect Donald Trump through the use of crypto. So first we saw it as a risk, and then that risk proved to be correct. It happened. It was done. So who uses it? Drug traffickers and money launderers like the one that Trump pardoned, who not only ran one of the world's biggest crypto exchanges at the time, but was ordering contract killings at the same time while he was heading this up Silk Road. He was pardoned. And Trump's pardoning other financial criminals similarly. At the same time, he's wiping out the enforcement mechanism, and he's soliciting funds from foreign governments. So exactly all of the parade of horribles, the worst things you could do with crypto, that's what they're doing.
How much money is Trump making now?
Pardon? How much money?
Yeah.
It's billions. It's billions, but we don't know how many. You can't see it. It's
invisible. It's invisible. Yeah.
It's designed not to be regulated, not to be visible. There are fixes that you can create, and Gary Gensler was in the process of creating the Biden administration, in which you treat them like securities and you treat them like currency, and you require reporting every time it touches the United States. It's not a perfect fix, but it's a considerable protection. All of that has been taken down.
But this even goes well beyond self-enrichment, right? I mean, this is basically undoing an entire international legal order where the possibilities for political corruption, let alone financial corruption, it's basically saying that, turning the world upside down and saying that corruption is open. It's open season. You can do whatever you want. Is that not right?
Yes, that is right. And this in turn ties into why are they firing so many people at the Central Intelligence Agency and the FBI and white-collar crime specialists, in particular, people tracking foreign influence, people tracking foreign money as it moves around. They're firing those people because those all represent the risk of leaks, of leakage, for what the president and his family and those close to him may be doing. It was bad enough during his first term. This stuff happened in his first term. Some of it has been proven. Others are very significant allegations. There was the Turkey case that wasn't prosecuted, of essentially a large Turkish loan to candidate Trump in 2016.
I believe it was $10 million.
Yeah, similar. It was kind of similar to what they did with former Senator Robert Menendez, who was convicted of accepting bribes from Turkey. Same kind of stuff. Wasn't investigated properly because Trump was president at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is during the time it was discovered and would have otherwise been investigated. So this stuff happened the previous round in multiple areas. This time it's at a different order of magnitude.
So what we're getting at, and Sean's question raises it, and your answer helps raise it, is that Trump is putting himself, while self-enriching, at the center of a new system he's creating of international crime. And I know that as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Law Enforcement, you're an expert in this. What does this sound right to you?
Yeah, if you look at the early Putin years, there was a famous money laundering case out of St. Petersburg in which Putin was said to be at the center of. Of course, later on, we learned that he is essentially a billionaire. He controls Russia's money as well as Russia's military power. When I was in my job as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for International Law Enforcement, I was the first one ever, essentially built that function at the State Department. What I learned from the FBI and the CIA and other U.S. government agencies is essentially that there are dirty nodes. And a dirty node is something that attracts all manner of bad behavior. So when you've got a location, whether it's a bank or a company that specializes in providing nominee directors and other opaque corporate services, or a dirty government, like Panama was under Noriega or Antigua was under the Byrd family. There are lots of other examples. That dirty node attracts all kinds of bad behavior. Attracts drug traffickers, terrorists, corrupt people, foreign leaders who are the adversaries of the United States, to hide their activity and foreign influence operations. You name the bad behavior, that's where it goes. Tax evasion, of course, at a massive level.
Mm-hmm.
So the question here is whether the President of the United States and the business that his son is leading in the crypto area and these coins that he's issuing, these crypto coins and tokens, are going to become dirty notes attracting every type of criminal activity, including the trading of favors, what may well be bribes, that you would think would be anathema to the whole tradition and history of our country. That's what we're looking at, and we're seeing the first glimmers of at this point. And it so disturbed Chuck Schumer this week that Schumer went to round up the Democrats who've been supporting crypto and the ability of crypto to move ahead with very limited oversight, and flipped the position to stop the legislation that was barreling through after the crypto industry gave tens of millions of dollars to Senate candidates and congressional candidates in the last election.
So this, I mean, it strikes me the more you talk, Jonathan, this is not just a matter of international. This is a matter of national security of the highest order, right? I mean, the threats being posed by this new system that Trump is constructing, right, makes it possible for all sorts of nefarious characters to be interfering with our country, right?
I worked on Russia's anti-money laundering law. I advised Russia on its anti-money laundering law. And after Putin had been in power for a certain number of years, I was in Moscow, and one day I said, I can't do this anymore. This is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It's completely being manipulated to serve the interests of one man and the people around him. They use it against their enemies. It's never applied to their friends, and it allows him complete power to manipulate the system. And I never went back after that. I had that realization as I was sitting in a bank office in Moscow. And we're adopting a system that's similar to the Putin system, in which the laws are there to be enforced against political enemies. And there's enormous layers of protection through opacity, through lack of transparency for everything and anything that those around the center of power might want to do. For personal enrichment, for personal power, to achieve their own goals as the people in control of the government.
Now, this is something people have not thought enough about at this level, which is that while Trump is altering our alliances, basically shattering the Western alliance and gravitating, at the least, and I'm being euphemistic, towards Putin and other authoritarian regimes, beneath it, there's also the money involved. And the money is not simply trade or tariffs. The money is illegal money and international crime and a whole new regime that he is part of.
The shakedowns are visible. He shook down Columbia University.
Yeah.
He tried to shake down Harvard. He shook down law firms. He shook down ABC. He's trying to shake down CBS right now.
Yep.
This is the pattern. It's essentially a pattern of extortion. Now, if we think that what we can see is the only thing that's going on, we're wrong about that. There's lots going on that we can't see. I recently read something that I previously heard orally. I don't know if it's true as a practice. I can only tell you I've heard it in my own legal practice. And then I read about it separately, which is that American businesses who want audiences with President Trump have to give $5 million to his PAC.
Yeah, I've heard this too.
Okay?
I've heard this too, yeah.
One case I know, I was told this in a confidential setting. I can't be more specific. In the other case, I read about a completely different case. Well, that's essentially bribery. How is that different from bribery? You want a meeting with the president, you pay $5 million. It's extraordinary. And we don't know a fraction of it.
And the tariffs are a way to do all of that, right? If you want to see the president to try to get tariff relief, you got to give him money and say that you're going to support him for the third term or something like that. You know,
he says all the nations and companies are kissing my ass. They're
right.
coming to me to kiss my ass, he says.
Right.
And what that means is, not least, the shakedown, and underneath it is personal self-enrichment.
Correct.
That's right. Oh, the tariffs, by the way, aren't lawful either. He doesn't have the authority to do with them what he's doing.
Well, that's completely true. That's right.
Worse.
That's right.
But
it's getting at this other layer, as Sidney was saying, when we see the politics of it. But the fact is, there's just crime. It's just a crime syndicate. That's an international crime syndicate that Donald Trump is in the center of and operating out of the Oval Office. We have to see it that way, don't we?
What happened to his last accountant? The guy who took care of business for him for many years?
Yes, right.
What happened to him?
Yeah, is he in jail, or he was certainly convicted of something?
He was compelled to investigate the interior of Rikers Island.
Yes, that's right.
So, Jonathan, we're delighted to have had you here. And Sean, any closing?
No, I want to know if Jonathan has any closing remarks.
Everything that I worked for over decades in government to try and make the world safer through promoting the common values of people across the world and discouraging people's ability to get ahead by violating basic laws is being undone in an incredibly short period of time at incredible speed. And our institutions so far have failed to combat it in any meaningful and adequate way. So the court of history will have to decide whether our institutions met the current moment and whether our people met the current moment. It's going to be an incredibly challenging period that's going to require the best of all of us.
Well, with that charge to us, thank you very much, Jonathan, for that sobering charge to us, and we'll just keep it going. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me here.
So, until the next time, the Court of History, for Sidney Blumenthal and myself, Sean Wilentz, see you next time.
I'm Michael Popak, and I got some big news for our audience. Most of you know me as the co-founder of Midas Touch's Legal AF and the Legal AF YouTube channel, or as a 35-year national trial lawyer. Now, building on what we started together on Legal AF, I've launched a new law firm, the Popak Firm, dedicated to obtaining justice through compassionate and zealous legal representation. At the Popak Firm, we are focused on obtaining justice for those who have been injured or damaged by a life-altering event by securing the highest dollar recoveries. I've been tirelessly fighting for justice for the last 35 years, so my own law firm organically building on my Legal AF work just feels right. And I've handpicked a team of top-tier trial fighters and settlement experts throughout all 50 states known as big auto injury attorneys who have the know-how to beat heartless insurance companies, corporations, government entities, and their attorneys. Big Auto's attorneys working with my firm are rock stars in their respective states and collectively responsible for billions of dollars in recoveries. So if you or a loved one have been on the wrong side of a catastrophic auto, motor vehicle, rideshare, or truck accident, suffered a personal injury, or been the victim of medical malpractice, employment harassment or discrimination, or suffered a violation of your civil and constitutional rights, then contact the Popak Firm today at 1-877-POPAK-AF or by visiting my website at www.thepopakfirm.com and fill out a free case evaluation form. And if we determine that you have a case and you sign with us, we don't get paid unless you do. The Popak Firm, fighting for your justice every step of the way.